can pass to the next presenter, that is Sylvain Rupert. And I suppose I have to say she will present how to determine the detection range of acoustic recordings in terrestrial environments. This is a very, I'm sorry, I have to say he will present a talk. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. It's always difficult.
Yes, always difficult.
Especially between France and Italian, with the A at the end or something like that, we are always confused.
Exactly. The topic of your presentation is a very hot topic, so I am willing to hear your talk.
Yeah, and
please go on.
I hope that I will answer some questions.
So, share your screen.
Yes. Up, share. Is it?
That's good.
It's good?
Yes.
Okay. Now up. It's still good?
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah, okay. So, hi everyone. So today I will try to answer the hot question, which is how to determine the detection range of acoustic recorders in terrestrial environments. This work was done at the Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle de Paris with Jérôme Sueur and with in collaboration with Frédéric Seb from the University of Saint-Étienne in France. Ecoacoustics is a relatively new field of research, and now there is an urgent need of standardization if we want to spread ecoacoustics methods to ecology, restoration, conservation as reliable tools. We saw this morning that there is a need of standardization with indices, and in this presentation I will focus on the recording distance. Because recording distance is required to provide reliable estimation of species richness, density, abundance, or occupancy, which is per unit area. And it's also required to define the number and position of autonomous recorder units. Recording distance depends on 4 factors: the receiver, the emitter, the transmission channel, and the ambient noise or ambient sound. The main objective of this work is to determine the recording distance of automatic recorder unit. We will try to answer the question how far a recorder is able to capture a sound and at which distance a sound is below the ambient noise or ambient sound. To answer these questions, we need first to provide an experimental method that to model the propagation of sound in a natural habitat. We need to estimate the attenuation of a natural habitat with minimum bias. And we need to determine the recording distance, knowing the overall attenuation, the characteristics of the emitter and receiver, and the ambient noise. And in this presentation, I will only focus on the overall attenuation and the ambient noise. We collected our data in 2 regions where we are conducting our 2 long-term ecoacoustics monitoring projects. And here I just focus on the project DB at NORAG. It is located in the neotropical rainforest in French Guiana. The habitat is a pristine lowland high rainforest. The altitude is about 50 meters. The temperature is about 27.9 degrees, and the relative humidity was 66% in January when we conducted the experiment. The sound attenuation is based on the so-called excess attenuation framework. Excess attenuation corresponds to the part of the sound that is not explained by the known and predictable attenuations. The popular definition is the following. You have the reference signal, generally 80 dB, let's say. We subtract the recorded signal from the reference signal, and we had also to subtract the spherical attenuation. The last one can be estimated theoretically. This is the popular definition, but it's incomplete because it's better to also subtract the atmospheric attenuation, which can also be estimated theoretically. So this is the ground-based definition. And in this talk, I will also subtract something else, which is the ambient noise or ambient sound. And this is our definition. And we claim that this excess attenuation, when we subtract all the other part, the attenuation, the geometrical attenuation, atmospheric attenuation, and ambient sound or ambient noise, we can estimate the habitat attenuation. The habitat attenuation, in our case, encompasses the ground effect, the wave scattering by trunks and leaves, the energy absorption by leaves, and so on. It's, yeah. And our hypothesis is that the habitat attenuation is a decay function controlled by the frequency f and the distance r. The propagation protocol consists in a speaker that broadcasts a wideband white noise between 0 to 20 kHz at 80 dB. The receiver is the popular SM4 from Wildlife Acoustics, and we recorded 22 seconds of ambient sound, followed by 20 seconds of white noise. We did that at different distances from the receiver here on the tree. We started at 10 meters to until 100 meters. And this is the pictures of the forest in the French Guiana. So we did a 100-meter transect. So now let's see the results. We start first with the spectrogram. Here, this spectrogram where you have on the vertical axis the frequency, on the horizontal axis is the distance, and also it's a sequence of ambient sound and followed by white noise and so on from 10 meters to 100 meters. And what we can observe first on this result, on this graph, is that we have a really dark band corresponding to the insect stridulations. And we can also observe that for the highest distance, the transmitted white noise is below the ambient sound. Here, there is no trace anymore of the white noise that is transmitted. And it's also true for the highest frequency from 40 or 50 meters. From this, we can compute the mean spectra of the recorded sound measured at each propagation distances. And you can see here the insect stridulation. And you can also see the decreasing of the sound level from 10 kilohertz to 20 kilohertz. And this is 3 heat maps here, where on the first one, the heat map corresponds to the distance on the horizontal axis, and on the vertical axis, you have the frequency level. The frequency. So the first heat map corresponds to the recorded signal. The second heat map corresponds to the ambient sound. They both were recorded. And the last one corresponds to the transmitted signal, which is the difference between the recorded signal minus the ambient sound. And you can see that for the highest frequencies here, there is nothing. It's just because the the transmitted signal is below the ambient sound. There is no white noise that is transmitted through the SM4 to the recorder. And the same here around the frequency band of the insect stridulations. So now that we have the experimental data, we can calculate the excess attenuation. So first, let's start with the current-based definition that I recall here. On this graph, you have on the vertical axis the excess attenuation normalized by the distance of propagation, and on the horizontal axis, you have the frequency. So you can see that with the current-based definition, there is no trend. It's impossible to say anything. But now, if you subtract the ambient noise, you get this curve here, this line, in fact, at least from 0 to 15 kilohertz, where you can see that there is a trend, a linear trend between the frequency and the excess attenuation normalized by the propagative distance. So this is the proof that our model is a kind of valid. And it's also a proof that we need to subtract the ambient noise in order to get the attenuation of the habitat. So now that we know we are able to calculate the attenuation of the habitat, we can simulate the propagation distance in the habitat. For that, we need a criteria. Our criteria is that a sound is still detectable if the level of the sound propagated is above the ambient sound. And the goal is to find the distance R that matches this criteria for each distance F. Here, it's an example. I want to show you an example of the propagation of a broadband sound from 0 to 20 kilohertz at 80 dB in French Guiana. We obtain here the profile for the recording distance with a minimum distance of 3 meters at 7.5 kilohertz and a maximum distance here of 94 meters at 4 kilohertz. We can also observe that there is a decreasing of the recording distance when the frequency increases. And also for low frequency, there is recording distance that decrease. And now if we, when we add the ambient noise profile here, which is here in green, we can observe that the ambient sound mostly drives the recording distance. With the peak of insect between 6 to 8 kilohertz and a high level of ambient noise at the lowest frequency here. So the highest high level here corresponds to a lower recording distance. This ambient sound profile was recorded at 2 p.m. in January when we performed our propagation distance experiment. So now the next question is, does the recording distance varies over a year? Meaning that what's going on if the ambient sound profile change? So we estimated the recording distance from our long-term monitoring project in French Guiana. We did that for 1 year. And here you have the pattern for January. So on this graph, what you can see is that the circle corresponds to 24 hours from midnight to noon till midnight. And the radius here corresponds to the recording distance from 50 meters to 250 meters. Oops, sorry. And the colors, the different colors, corresponds to the different frequency bands. And so we compute that for all the months, so from January to December. And what we can observe here is that there is high seasonality variability. All patterns here are different. There is high hourly variability. It's almost never a circle, except for the red circle here, which is for the 7 to 8 kilohertz, which is the insect stridulations that occurs all along the year and almost all along the day. And there is also high frequency variability. The circles have different radius. So now if we quantify the radius, we can see that the distance can vary up to 4 times. For instance, here in February at 7 p.m. For the frequency 1 to 2 kilohertz, the radius is about 200 meters, while here in May, for the same hour, the radius is about 50 meters. So if the radius vary up to 4 times, the surface vary up to 16 times. It's just the square. And which means that there is, of course, a huge impact on density estimation. So very quickly now, just for fun, I wanted to show you that we can also simulate some attenuation with our model at different distance, even if our model is very simple. We try to simulate the song attenuation of the famous Lipogus vociferans from French Guiana. It's one of the loudest birds with a song that is 112 0.5 dB SPL. What we started we at 40 meters, where you can really recognize the famous signature of this bird, and we simulate the distance of propagation until 1 kilometer. What you can see is that the higher frequency content disappear first. It's visible here at 500 meters, where there is no more high frequencies, because it's also below the ambient noise, because there is noise at that frequency, but you can still see the lowest frequency. And as expected, the song can be heard until 1 kilometer. At 1 kilometer, the song is no more detectable, while it's still a bit detectable at 750 meters. So now let's conclude. The take-home message of this presentation is that the ambient sound is the key factor. We need to subtract its contribution to obtain non-biased excess attenuation. I will call you our definition of the excess attenuation. The excess attenuation, in this case, we claim that it's equal to the habitat attenuation. And I showed you also that the ambient sound drives the recording distance R. So the recording distance R shows high seasonality and hourly variability, and it varies according to the sound source's frequency and dB level. These conclusions are also valid for our long-term ecoacoustics monitoring called forest in Jura. I've got the results in extra slides if we need it. And soon, this model and all the function will be included in the C-Wave R package, and also in our MAD Python package, that we developed with Juan Ulloa, and it's now also available. And the final take-home message is that ecoacoustics needs to take into account the recording distance to avoid biased estimation of acoustic richness and abundance. So it's finished, thank you, and I will be very happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Sylvain, for your excellent presentation. I am open to questions from the chat. I don't see any question now. Yes, Christian Kohler. Sorry, I don't have to see to the chat. Christian Kohler.
No problem. Hello. Just a brief question concerning the atmospheric attenuation. What role does it play in real life, like temperature or humidity?
So the atmospheric attenuation, there is a way to estimate it in a quite simple manner. And it takes into account the temperature, the relative humidity, and the pressure, the barometric pressure, and also the frequency of the sound. And with everything, you can estimate the atmospherical attenuation. And I can show you this slide here. Here on this slide, it's in Jura, not in French Guiana, but it's the same as what I showed you just before. In this graph in the middle, you have the contribution of each attenuation. So in green, it's the popular spherical attenuation or geometrical attenuation. So it's the main contribution, but in red, you have the atmospherical contribution, which is not that, cannot completely neglect, it's not completely negligible, it's significant, let's say. And in purple, you have the habitat attenuation, which is also quite important. So if you add both the atmospherical attenuation and the habitat attenuation, it could be something like half or 1/3 of the total attenuation. So yeah, it's very important to take into account the atmospherical attenuation.
Pardon. One more question from Marco Gamba.
Hey, thank you for your talk. Great talk. We did something very similar in Madagascar in the rainforest, and we had a lot of issues because when we wanted to understand the excess attenuation, we had a lot of variation in the ambient noise, let's say. And so I was wondering whether you experienced something like this in some of the places where you've been testing this framework. Thanks.
So we did that in two different areas in France and also in French Guiana, and of course the ambient noise or ambient sound changed a lot. That's why we recorded the ambient noise every time before each frequency, each distance, in order to be able to remove the contribution, the current contribution of the ambient noise through the white noise that is propagated through the forest. And we also choose to use white noise instead of a chirp, or even worse, let's say worse, because it's not very good, pure tone, because white noise is very robust to noise, because it's also noise. So you can, at the end, average everything to obtain a nice spectra. If you use tonal or pure tone, let's say, if when you send, let's say 4 kilohertz pure tone, and if at that time one bird is singing too loud, then it destroys your measurement. So white noise, it's more robust.
Okay,
Great.
I'm sorry to say there is no more time for questions. I mean, the problem is very interesting and intriguing, but I have to introduce the